This week saw Samsung announce its new Samsung Galaxy S21 devices. They arrived a couple of months earlier than usual this year, but the timing of the launch wasn't the only break from tradition. Samsung has also bucked its trend of actually upgrading most of the hardware inside its popular S devices. And while the Samsung Galaxy S21 looks very different from last year on the outside, it actually shares a lot of similarities from the S20 on the inside. The biggest difference, other than its design, is its price. Last year, the Galaxy S20 cost $1,499 here in New Zealand. This year, the Samsung Galaxy S21 will cost $1,399 here in New Zealand. Does the low price of the S21 mean it's a worse phone than last year's S20? Yes and no, but mainly no. The S21 is a very similar phone to the S20, but it's trimmed some of the unimportant bits that made last year's device so expensive. For example, the S21 has no wraparound display, a lower resolution screen, 4GB less RAM, a plastic rear, and it comes with no charger or headphones bundled in the box. And most people won't miss these features, so yes, in a lot of ways it is a less premium device, but the new Exynos 2100 processor more than makes up for that, but I'll come to that in a bit. First, let's take a close look at the price, because it kind of annoys me. For the first time in about a decade, Samsung has bucked the trend of increasing the price of its flagship smartphone. The Galaxy S21 will cost about $1,399 at launch, which is $100 cheaper than the S20 cost when it launched back in early 2020. Sounds like a good deal, right? Kind of, but not really. In the US, the price drop is way better, as the S21 costs $799 and that's $200 cheaper than the S20 cost, which was $999 at launch. By the way, the conversion rate at the time of recording is $1 equals $1.40 here in New Zealand, which means the New Zealand price for the S21 will have needed to drop by $280.62 to keep pace with the American discount. Anyway, let's focus on what is here. I like the new design. I've never been one to care much about having a glass back, so the polycarbonate plastic rear, or Glassstick as Samsung is keen to push, is fine with me. And the colours, Phantom Violet, Phantom Grey, Phantom White and Phantom Pink seem fine too. A lot of noise has been made about Samsung's new, slimmer camera bump too. And yes, it is thinner than before, which is obviously a good thing, but I'm the sort of user who puts their phone in a case as soon as possible. So the old Galaxy designs, or any phone camera bump for that matter, never offended me like it did some people, as they were always levelled out by the case. However, if you're the sort of person who is kept up late at night worrying about camera bumps, good news, it's less bumpy. The device's biggest improvement is the Exynos 2100 processor that introduces 5nm transistors, meaning the Samsung Galaxy S21 is a more powerful, more power efficient device, as its chipsets can, in theory, perform more calculations without getting too hot thanks to the 5nm technology. This, of course, has a knock-on effect on the rest of the phone. Samsung is keen to point out that new technology allows it to make significant gains in image processing and battery performance, for example. While we're talking about battery performance, let's talk about how there's no charger in the box quickly. Predictably, Samsung has followed Apple's lead and has dropped the charger from its box. It's a bit of an embarrassing move after it trolled Apple a couple of times on Twitter a few months ago. But apart from that, it's not really a biggie for most people, as we all have collected several wall chargers over the years, and it's good for the environment, so whatever, it doesn't really bother me as much. About that downgraded display, there's a 6.2 Full HD Plus 1080 by 2400 AMOLED display on the S21, and it's fine, but it's a less sharp display than last year's S20, which boasted a 1440 by 3200 pixel screen. The S20 boasts a 120Hz display, just like the S20, that dynamically optimizes refresh rate for whatever you're doing on the phone, peaking at 120Hz for intensive tasks such as gaming, while dropping down to as low as 48Hz, and thus saving battery, for low intensive tasks, such as reading an article in a news app. I fear that these downgraded specs of the S21 is going to overshadow what's important here. The S21's 1080 by 2400 AMOLED 120Hz screen is still really good, more than good in fact. It looks great and users will love it. Had nobody told me it was a slightly less pixely screen, I doubt I'd even notice the difference. The camera setup on the S21 is the same as last year's S20. Should we be annoyed about the lack of upgrades to the camera? I'm not so sure. It's important to remember that last year's S20 saw Samsung's biggest sensor upgrade in its smartphone history. So no, on balance, I don't think we should be that bothered about seeing no hardware upgrades with the S21. Instead, this year's camera improvements can be found in Samsung's image processing software. I really like the images the Galaxy S21 takes. In the past, Samsung has been a little bit guilty of doing too much with image processing, and the S21 does a little bit too much too, but it's not as much, and this new device is a step in the right direction. I'd even go as far as suggesting the S21 is comparable with the iPhone 12's camera, though, as I said before, it is guilty of overexposing and over-engineering the image a bit, and this has a negative impact on the image purity. Take a look at these images, especially the close-ups of the images I took of my dogs in the woods at the back of my house. Here you can see the image processing engines at work as the curls on my Labradoodle look a bit like a Photoshop effect. I think the iPhone 12 still just about has the edge though. Conversely, I think the S21 does a better job of bringing the bricks to life in the background. The S21 really excels in low light scenarios. I took a series of photos with it alongside my iPhone 12 Pro, and I think the S21 does a better job of producing a lifelike image compared to the iPhone 12 Pro. And that's a big deal. I should mention that the featured photo took the Samsung 4 to 5 seconds to process after capturing, while the iPhone 12 Pro rendered the photo instantly. So there's another thing. All in all, I love the performance of the Samsung Galaxy S21's camera. The average point and shoot smartphone photographer is going to love it too. The Samsung Galaxy S21 has a 4000 mAh battery on board, and yep, you guessed it, this is the same as last year's S20. That's not the full story here though. The Exynos 2100 chipset is actually the story. Usually, people are a bit miffed if their territory doesn't get the full-fat Snapdragon processor, as it means worse battery performance. This year though, I suspect us Exynosers won't be as annoyed. And while I can't say for sure the Exynos 2100 is more power efficient than Snapdragon 888 because I haven't been able to test both devices, I can say that I'm impressed with the battery inside this Samsung Galaxy S21 with the Exynos chip. I'm a pretty heavy smartphone user, constantly doom scrolling on Twitter, taking pictures and videos of my dog, reading news articles, listening to podcasts on Spotify, using Google Maps for sat-nav when I'm driving, while listening to Spotify or podcasts, or just goofing around on WhatsApp with my friends and family. You get the picture. I use my phone quite a lot, and the biggest compliment I can give the S21 is that it handled everything I threw at it and still had enough charge to last the whole day. Easily. Charging the S21 is an average experience though. The phone could still only handle 25 watt fast charging, with Samsung doggedly refusing to get sucked into the super fast charging speed war that Chinese smartphone manufacturers seem to be excelling at. Okay, here's my verdict. The Samsung Galaxy S21 is all about two things: a lower price tag and a better processor that makes this phone, that's otherwise not very different from last year's model, a bit better in all departments. The price drop is obviously a good thing. However, here in New Zealand, it's only 100 New Zealand dollars cheaper, which is offensively smaller than the discount seen in the US, and that leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, which for many might be compounded by the lack of actual upgrades elsewhere in the phone. If you can get over that though, it is a good phone. I just wish that here in New Zealand we had the same discount as the US. Then, with nearly a 400 New Zealand dollar discount, it would be a great phone.